Welcome to The Goalpost, the podcast where it's all about long-term player development. We're here to talk soccer through a different lens, one that puts the players before the scoreboard and progress before pressure. This is all youth soccer with a purpose. All development, all the time. I'm your host, Jason Glover. So an ID session isn't a final exam. It's a snapshot, really, of where a player is at, whether it's your son or daughter, and it really kind of shows where they can grow next. So, Mike, if we're thinking about ID sessions within a club, what are they designed to do, and how can parents navigate through the ID session landscape?
Well, I think before we even go further, the ID, you're going to see kick-arounds and ID sessions, right? And what you and I discussed this the other day, they are basically the same thing. Mm-hmm. They are informal opportunities, okay? Informal from the aspect of there are certain rules and guidelines that MISA sets out, or any state federation puts out, with regards to how a club or a coach can communicate with players, because players usually are attending an ID session or a kick around because they are looking for something. Okay. And so the idea, kick around ID sessions, and I had a girl out at one of our ID sessions last night. And it was funny, at the end of the session, I pulled them over. I just said, thank you for coming. What, if any, questions do you have? And I just really encouraged them to ask questions. I said, hey, if you think of questions later, don't be afraid to just tell your parents and they can get in touch with me. I actually got a couple of questions sent to me this morning.
Oh, nice.
And one girl stayed after, and she's like, I have one question, is like, when do I try out?
Oh.
And I said, you don't need to try out. And I said, all you need to do is come and play. And, I said, it's our job to try to evaluate you in such a way that we determine whether there's an environment that we have that can help you grow as a player. And then, but here's the second part of this that I think I try to emphasize with all the families. As much as we are evaluating and looking at the players, we need these families and these players evaluating us as much or more. Mm-hmm. And it has to start with, why are you looking at a place that's different than where you're at right now?
That doesn't include the negative connotation of how another club or entity disappointed you. It's just, what are you looking for in this next phase of the journey with your child?
Absolutely. And so this player, this girl, I said, what are you looking for? And she kind of was confused. And I said, here's my question for you. And it's the number one thing that I look for in a player. Do you love to play? Yes. I said, did you have fun tonight? Yes. Do you feel like you could get better in this environment? Yes. And then I said, here's the tough question. Why do you want to leave where you currently are? And I said, I'm not looking for anything other than reasons for you. And she started with talking about her coach. And I said, no, I don't want to talk about the coach. I want to talk about you. What is it that you want? And she's like, I don't want to be on the bench. I said, okay, you feel like you've been on the bench a lot. Why? Because I don't help them win. And I said, okay, so you want to play, and you want to play as much as possible. So you want to be part of a team that you get the opportunity to play a lot. Yes. And you want to get better. Yes. Do you have to win? And she's like, well, I like to win. I said, I love to win too. And I just said, my question is, if you're having fun and you're getting better, are you willing to lose games? She's like, yes. I said, okay. So now you have a place to start. Whether it may be with us or anybody else, you have to have your own why. Why are you looking to do something different? I sometimes get a little bit, it's not suspicious, but I caution people who I think are just sort of out there fishing, like they're where they're at. They just want to go see, is there somewhere better?
Sure.
Because my thought is, it's our job. Your job as a coach for your players, my job as a coach for my players, is to be clear and transparent about what you're about, what the parent should expect. And then they should see it consistently at training. And then they should see that those principles, those values, the messages that you're sending should be borne out in the games. They should see the things that you are talking about as being the most important things. For example, if you get a group, it doesn't matter what the age, if they cannot dribble the ball, then that's where they're at. And there is no great success until they are extremely comfortable with the ball. And so there are periods of time where I will let the parents know, listen, we're going to have to let these players take risks, solve problems, and it's going to look messy. It's going to look ugly. And you have to show up to the game excited about that. Because what you're going to see, what you may have seen before as my kid messing up or making mistakes, we need to reframe that as, look at what my kid is trying to do. Look at the experiences that, instead of avoiding them and us never knowing that my kid couldn't beat a player one-on-one, or my kid couldn't, shift and explode, or my kid couldn't draw pressure to move a player so that there was space created. My kid couldn't, get out of a situation where there's 2 or 3 defenders around them and they just come up with something.
Yeah.
The things that you want to see your kid do will never happen if you're not willing to see them fail and fail repeatedly in the early stages. Certainly athleticism plays a part. Okay, so if kids come out, you're looking for players that can compete at a physical level. We can't deny that in a competitive environment, there's a level of athleticism that generally is a prerequisite. But we also understand that some of the kids you're looking at were born in January, and some kids you're looking at were born in November and December. And there's a huge disparity
Right.
for where they are at in their development in life, maturity, physical, emotional, all that stuff. And so what we have to look at is this player someone who loves to play? Is this player someone who, when we weren't standing there watching, was competing the entire time, engaged the entire time? Because we don't want to coach effort. We really don't want to. It does nobody any good. Because if they give you better effort when you're coaching it, are they really giving you better effort because they decided to? And so, but then, do they want feedback? Do they take the feedback, and then do they improve in small bits and ways? Because in a short period of time, you can look at a kid and go, I don't look at a kid and say, here's what he or she could do for us. At some level, absolutely. I really look at a player and go, within our environment, within our system, this is a kid that we think we can help grow immensely.
Well, and think about the girl that is having this conversation with an adult that she's not familiar with, and think about the growth that has to occur in that moment specific to that child having that adult-like conversation and it being uncomfortable. But that's not just asking what team or what you're looking for in a team or what team you want to be on or what you're looking for in a coach. That's actually developing a characteristic within that actual player to be able to feel brave enough and self-conscious enough to initiate a conversation, create dialogue, come up with a thought process. That's not easy to do. So first, congrats to her and her family too, to put that type of child in that situation. It's important. I think that sometimes that gets lost. These ID sessions are probably very hard on kids.
I think it gets lost. Well, they think they're out there trying out, and there's a level of stress that doesn't need to be there. There are clear boundaries, clear things that we're allowed to say and what we're not allowed to say. And, you want to make sure that you're honest with people. So, something that I could say is, look, during the training session, your child was able to compete very well within the framework of what we were doing. Okay. So if a child struggled tremendously and we don't have a team that would support her, no matter how badly we want to help her, what unfortunately does become a reality is you cannot just help everyone all the time. You have to be clear about what you can do and what you can deliver. And it's hard because as coaches, I'm a teacher, I'm a parent, okay, I'm a coach. I do this because I love spending time with kids. I love to see how they feel as their confidence grows, how they literally change as a person. I love to hear about the different conversations that take place in the car. I love to have conversations with the parents who now say, I'm coming to the game and my mindset is completely different. And what they'll say is, they're just fun to watch. I'm like, they're an absolute adventure.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna dribble everywhere. We're gonna fight. We're gonna play. It's not gonna be perfect. But what we're doing is we're building the framework of something that we want to see come together over a 3, 4, 5-year period. And the truth is nobody thinks in that time horizon.
Right. They think about right now jumping to another club. And where maybe the approach is a little bit flawed is that the ID session isn't a final exam. It's more of like just a quiz. It's just a snapshot. So you perform, all right, maybe you didn't perform so well today. You're nervous. Come back the next time and keep coming back. But then when you do figure out where you should be placed, I also think that not only are ID sessions not final exams, they're kind of like fake resumes, because if a coach has a really good player coming out, they change their personality, right? So you're kind of fluffing your resume. And if you're not in it for the right reason, same for the family. The family's going to say how dedicated everybody is. And my kid loves soccer. And, 6 months later, they're not showing up. They're missing for every other sport. There's poor communication. Like, we all fall into the same trap. So how do we clear out this fake resume for the coach, me included? I'm a coach. I'm a parent. How do we clear this up? How do we make it real so that the children who are out there get the real sense? And what I would say, what we're doing right now with YDP, that's as real as it gets. Like, you go out there last night, there's tons of kids out there. There's tons of coaches. There's a lot of activity.
It kind of shocked me. It was like all of a sudden, like over 10 minutes, I'm like, hold on, there's 50 more kids.
I could tell that you were I could tell, Mike, last night that you were anxiously awaiting more kids to arrive. And I looked at the clock and I was like, what time is it? Because he seems like he's anticipating, because there wasn't very many kids there. Within maybe 2 minutes, everybody started showing up. And this is 10 minutes before we even start. So this isn't like kids are running late. This is early. But we usually wait 5 minutes. We let free play, it's just kids playing, and then we start. And it was like more and more and more kids kept showing up that are in the club. I mean, you had some ID session players. I think I might have had a couple, and stretched across multiple age groups. But I want to know from your perspective, like last night's training, lots of individual development on the ball, 1v1s, showing creativity, personality. If you're an ID session kid, I would love to know what the feeling was last night. Like it has to be different than a typical training session, even in our own club, but say it's outside of the club. I just think it's such a unique experience to see and hear and feel YDP. And, oh, by the way, the email that we send out that you craft and it goes out to the parents, like we follow that. I just think that it's such a unique environment.
Well, obviously everything can go off, but think about a parent, okay, and they show up and they're coming for an ID session or a kick around, and they have the opportunity to choose from two teams. And let's say these two teams are training right next to each other. And the parent comes out and they're going to wait and look and see. They've already done their research. They've already figured out which divisions they're playing in SLISA. Tournaments. Do they play tournaments? Do they travel? Because these are all like hot button things. None of those things make your kid better.
Right.
Can they provide some enjoyment? Sure. But then they get out there and on one side, okay, because this is, I think, constantly with YDP, I keep coming back to this, and the thing that I want to most express and what I hope resonates most with coaches. You're watching these two sessions, parents sitting there with their child who they think is a good player and who they love more than anything. And they want to get it right. All right. And they've decided that, they're going to make the choice and direct their kid. So on one field, there's the coach, there's cones, there's lines, there's organization. Kids are moving through, they're executing little patterns or doing certain things. They're laughing, kind of goofing, whatever, but the coach is keeping them in line. And they're just nice and tidy in and out of things. And then on the other field, it's kids flying around everywhere. Okay. And there's like 3 balls on the field, and they're trying to dribble, and they're losing the ball, and they're falling down, and they're having to get up, and they're trying moves. And the parent oftentimes, way too often, which one are they going to choose, Jason? Which one are they going to choose?
Well, they're going to choose the sterile environment.
Yes, the one that is adult-led, commanding force, okay, organized, structured. What I would tell coaches, if I was doing a coaching course, one of the first things I would tell them is, if your training session looks good, how much did you really improve? Because you have to fail.
Well, there's a myth of a perfect youth soccer player or any youth athlete. There's this myth where everything has to look great. Like we're creating these miniature professionals, and it's not. That's not how kids learn. You have to make mistakes in the games and the trainings. What's important is how we as coaches frame the mistakes to use it as a growth opportunity, encouraging kids to be brave on the ball, to be creative. Those are the things that you should be looking for as a parent. And I think that where we get it wrong is we go, well, that kind of looks like maybe what City, the pro team, would do on a Saturday night. Like that looks really clean. And you go, well, they're professionals. And it's a warm up before the game. That's not what happens in a regular training session for an 8-year-old. But we're not educated enough.
one thing, I may get this wrong, but it's sometimes you just hear people say something and you're like, oh gosh, I wish I could say it like that. And it was like, we're not trying to teach kids to repeatedly solve the same problem. We're trying to teach kids how to be able to adapt at a nanoseconds notice to respond to a variety of different scenarios and challenges, to repeatedly put them in a situation where they have to solve a unique problem, but one that is never the same exactly as it was before. And so you see these things, but the truth is, in all reality, the parents honestly don't know exactly what they're looking for, because one, maybe they didn't play, or maybe they're just looking for the version of soccer that was there when they grew up. And they don't understand that the pathway toward their child becoming the type of player that they don't even recognize does not look the way they think it looks. But it's so hard because they're trying to do the right thing, and it's so difficult for them to decide on that. So you had asked a question before, like, how do they? We just have to be transparent about who we are and what we do. And we just have to understand and respect the fact that some parents are going to choose that path, and some parents are not. And that it's not personal, and it doesn't matter what we know. All we can do is try to provide as much education as possible. And it's every time we have these conversations, I try to refer back to specific things that have happened and are currently happening. And one of the things is, I try to tell parents, look, if you are coming because you want to win more games, this isn't the right place for you. And it's not that we're not going to win games. It's not that we don't want to win games. The winning of games is a byproduct of the performance of the players over an extended period of time. We want them to have success, yes. We want them to have challenges, yes. And you're trying to play with a certain style, with a certain set of principles and ideas, and then let those kids go and build it for themselves. We pad the room and then let them go nuts within it, give them some guidance.
Right.
Okay. We let kids play different positions, which makes a result harder to come by. Our goalkeepers are playing off their line with their feet all the time, which makes it a challenging environment because you're going to make mistakes. The teams that we play know that our keeper's not punting the ball, not because they're never going to punt the ball, but at these early stages of development, we want to teach the kids, that's your ball. You own it. You make the decision. You can solve these problems. And when they make a mistake, they didn't intend to make the mistake. Okay, but we have to discuss, did they make a mistake because they were afraid and didn't want to mess up, which is how development cannot happen. That's what's happening. Kids are doing things all over the field, and they don't know why they're doing it. They're just doing it to avoid the responsibility that comes with being under pressure.
And isn't it true, Mike, that we're looking for players who show signs that they want to grow, which kind of puts everything that we've talked about into a pretty simple statement? Because if you're not willing to grow, you're probably on a great team. There's probably not a lot of opponent adversity, and you can win all 20 games, fall and spring, have a great goal differential, but how are you growing from that? So I think, especially for you and I, we're looking for players who are willing to grow. Would we take a top flight athlete? Absolutely. Those are a lot of fun to have on your team, but we're not looking for the perfect player. We're looking for those players that are showing signs that they want to grow. And I'll go back to that girl who had the conversation with you. What a great growth statement right there, to have that conversation with you after training. And I love that. what I would also maybe talk a little bit about is team changes. So in these ID sessions, they do typically cycle through to tryouts. So where do we get it wrong in the sense that parents have an impression that because they're paying, that their kids should play on a team with friends, but we don't get that same leverage in the school system. So you take your kid to school, kindergarten, maybe the first year they find a really great friend. Second year, you don't have much authority to be able to get your child into the same grade with the same friend group. Like they sort of get mixed up. How do we challenge that as coaches and as clubs?
Again, they're paying. Okay. What I think though is what I have found fairly consistently is if you are out in front and very clear about what you stand for, okay, and you're adamant that that's what you're there to do. I always try to tell parents, we understand that you are trying to make the right decision for your child. What we can do, what we owe you is full transparency. We owe you the opportunity to educate yourself based on our philosophies, our principles, and why we do the things that we do. We are open to respectfully disagree. We are also open for the possibility that sometimes, okay, maybe we saw this and this player maybe is struggling in this environment more than we thought, or this player is excelling more. We have to create flexibility, fluidity, because we're a club that's designed to develop players rather than a club that is a series of independent teams run by independent contractors. Okay, look throughout the landscape. How many true clubs with a philosophy that runs through all the ages, all the genders? Okay, that is it's an extremely tall task.
Yeah.
All right. And we can't argue with the fact that people get paid and should have the opportunity as coaches to earn money. And what's the easiest way to earn money? Be successful. How are you successful? In the eyes of the parents, win games, because they believe that if their child's team is winning games and successful or at certain divisions or certain levels or in certain leagues, that means that their child is developing. It's hard to find out and realize later that is not the case. Something that we're going to talk about more here in just a second. But they are paying money and get to make those choices. And as much as we may be challenged by that, that is their right. That's your right as a parent. It's my right as a parent. But if we just educate parents and say, look at it through the lens of development. Try to remove your emotions.
Difficult.
It's hard for them to do. And this is what I constantly would tell you. Look, I believe that no fewer than 80 to 85% of the players are not being developed to their potential. And I believe that the players don't really understand it. Sure. They don't know that because their only frame of reference is their own experience. And quickly, there's another player that came out to the kick around, and the parent asked, well, why don't you do tournaments? And what I said is, we don't start off with tournaments being something that are mandatory for us. And she'll say, well, I think isn't it a great opportunity for these kids? Like, we went with our team, we went out of town. It was a great opportunity to bond. And I responded with, you mean the team that you left last year?
Yeah.
And now you're on your second team in 2 years, and now you're coming and having conversations with us. Why? Did traveling out of town, the hard part about that is it it brings parents together socially. It brings the kids together. So their development becomes a secondary or tertiary focus because they don't want to leave their friends. Because they've decided, and not that it's wrong or right, that their social experience is more important than their ability to grow as a player. And so what I have tried, to do is at the youngest ages, develop them all to the absolute best ability that you possess. And what happens is you start to see kids that love to play, love to train. They bring certain quality to the game. And then over time, you bring those players together. You can still have your great friendships, but as they get older, these kids want to be around other players who want to be at training, who love to go play, who they now can then build more lasting bonds with. The reality is that your child's not going to play for 8 years with the same kid starting at the age of 7.
Right.
If it happens, it's an outlier. It's definitely an anomaly.
Yeah.
And most likely, kids have been chosen within those ranks as the best players. And so what happens is the majority of those kids assume roles, which is, I think, one of the worst things that can happen for young players. Now you've got a job to do. You have a role to play on a team at the age of what, 9, 10, 11, 12?
Right.
We will have no idea what these players can become at a minimum the age of 15 and 16. Our roads, these kids' athletic journeys are ending at 15 and 16 when they could potentially be just beginning. And look, regret is much bigger than trying and failing. It's a lot easier for me to live with the fact that I tried something and didn't get it quite right and learned than living with the regret of never trying something.
Yeah.
And people are afraid. And that's why I'm like, you have to go. You can look at clubs, go find the coach, go talk to the parents, go put your kid in an environment and sit back and watch. If your kid is not out there dominating, but they're fitting in, the environment looks good. Go watch that team play. Instead of getting on your computer and logging in and checking out their league results that have so little to do with their growth as a player. We spend years wasting time when these kids could be getting better. And then later in their journey, you're now armed with so much more information. Your child is more of a unique player, authentic to who he or she is. And now you have some clarity on where the next place is, on what the next steps would be. We're just moving kids from club to club, or we're trusting a club that's just going to bring in more kids.
Right. So what happens then after ID sessions, the tryouts, talk about the plans that you and I have been discussing with what the summer should look like for these players that are coming to the ID sessions. They sign up now. What happens next?
For me, I will send a note to the parents just saying, thank you very much for bringing your child out. I always tell them, bring them out once to see if it's a place that you'd be willing to come out again. If they get in the car, did they have fun? Did they learn? Ask them about their experience. Ask about, what the focus of the session was. Did they play a lot? Did they get on the ball a lot? Did they make a lot of mistakes? Were they welcomed? Did kids introduce themselves? Because we talk to our kids all the time about, hey, look, this is a time where you are empowered to go and make choices that you feel are best for you. And we love you. But if you feel like there's another opportunity that interests you, you owe it to yourself to look at those options. It's not personal, and we don't have to agree because we want to help each kid. But we also let them know there'll be players coming in. Sometimes they're friends that they're bringing in, or kids from other clubs, other teams who are weighing their options, looking at their options for a variety of different reasons. And we just let them know when they show up, introduce yourself, say hi, because we've all been places before where we were the new guy, and we didn't know other people. And it just helps if somebody just introduced themselves or says, hey, why don't you come onto this field?
Right.
So that's about human development, just being a good person. Because we always talk about character wins. Character wins. Not all these kids are going to be the best players, but character goes a long way toward being a valuable member of a team. I just think we got kids that are trying to be valuable members of a team at an age where they should be like, give me the ball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
and
after
let me try to
go ahead.
So I follow up with them and I just say, listen, this is an opportunity and a time period where your child is looking at all their options. If what we do resonates with you, please follow up with any questions that you have. There are guidelines laid down by MISA that we must follow, but I can let them know, hey, look, I don't know what we're going to have if we can't necessarily serve a kid's interests. We have to be honest with that. We can't tell them, hey, you'd be on our team, you'd make this, but we can say, look, you saw the session. We feel like she fit in very well. There was challenges for her. She had opportunities to grow. And we can let you know, here is what we're looking to do next year. And if this is something that you'll continue to be interested in, then, hey, just please feel free to stay in touch. But we also understand that you're part of a team now, and we respect the commitment that you are going to give that team, and we wish you the very best. And then it usually just prompts a conversation. And it's always gone, sometimes there are players that you could potentially be excited about that don't make that decision. And I think the only reason I get really disappointed is because I know in my heart of hearts what we could do for that player. But I can't like go and try to convince them, because to me that sounds self-serving. You know what I mean? And I don't want anybody to feel pressured. I want them to be like, look, you've given us all this information. You've answered every question that we had. We've had conversations with our child. And now we're going to do what every parent should do. Do what they think is right for their kid. And all we can do is, by serving the players and the families that we currently work with, is to hope that resonates with others. Maybe teams that we play against. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or a kid that comes out to a session and it just looks and feels different than what they're used to.
And someone that does sign up and does accept, the summer is a very important time. And it's a summer of free play. And I'll kind of frame this a little bit, because we've talked about it a lot, but free play is specific. So, thinking of summer being almost 12 weeks-ish.
Yes.
We're looking at June 16th through the 19th, June 23rd through the 27th, July 7th through the 10th, having a free play summer player development series. What's that look like in your mind if you're talking out loud and framing it? If a parent is interested in doing this, it's incredibly cheap. It's $30. So total.
Let's say affordable.
Yeah. It's price conscious is what it is.
Well, I think you will reaffirm this, but I think I've been saying free play since you and I have been talking. And I asked you earlier before we got on this call, I asked you, Haley, who played in college at Illinois State, um, and who I had the pleasure of coaching, who I told you absolutely loved to play the game, loved to come to training, was always early, hard worker, loved the ball. And I asked you, how often she just play? And what did you tell me?
Outside of training, minimal.
Yep.
In the backyard,
Yes.
I mean, she has siblings. She has 3 other siblings. So we created a backyard. This is funny. It used to be called Purple Pancakes. I don't know how that became the name of our small-sided game, but it was usually me versus them. And we played for hours in the backyard. Other than that, nothing in the neighborhood. Never in the neighborhood. Never just a pickup game. It was either in our backyard or at training with you. That was it.
So the culture came from your home. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, which is something that we've talked a lot about. Think about families that culture doesn't exist in the home. The culture where the families, the parents never played soccer. We're in a society today where we like to show up on a Monday and talk about our kids' accomplishments from that weekend. And our kid going out to the park on Saturday and Sunday and playing 3 or 4 hours with friends isn't something that we talk about, right?
Right.
But if you ask me, Mike, hey, you have a kid and you want to give them he or she the best chance to reach his or her full potential, their unique, authentic self, what would be the most important thing? And I would say play as much as possible.
Yep.
In an environment where adults are not there. And so I was at another club. It's STLDA. It was sporting. Had a girls' academy, 2007 girls' academy group that they had called me in. As happens, teams move during the summer. They go to it. I mean, they move in mass. It is the wild, wild west.
Right.
And, it's a crazy time of year and it's easy to get caught up in it. And then parents just accept theirs as their reality. And it's hard for them to see what their child could have become because they just feel like the path that their kid is on, they get immersed in that life. And it's hard for them to step back and see any different path. And the biggest regret I could ever have would be to not create or find the environment that allows my children to become the best version of themselves in an environment where they play and have fun and get a lot of time to grow. And so with this group, these were like, I think the top 4 teams had left the club. So there's a group that were like, Girls Academy, what? We're not here for that. It was a bunch of kids and families that were being asked to do something that they were not ready for, did not expect, had never been developed for. Nobody had any expectations of them like that because there were other teams in the club and they all left. And I remember the phone call. They're like, hey, we got a job for you. And so
dirty job,
and one of the things that I did was we started playing free play. And it always takes a while. I told you this before, we were having to bring free play to the kids because it's just not present in our culture these days. Yeah. Certain neighborhoods, maybe, but I mean, kids are traveling to basketball practice and then this and then that. I mean, everything is regimented. And the thing that's keeping them from becoming the absolute best version of themselves is the cheapest. It's the easiest. It's the thing we have the least control over. And that's what troubles us. And that's what's the most challenging because we got to just let our kids go play. And what you see, so we started with, okay, we had a group of about, I don't know, it looked like about 40 girls. And so we knew we had a good group. And so we started during the summer, the first summer, I said, hey, we're going to have free play. And Jeremy Moore, who I think you know, he no longer lives in St. Louis, but he was wonderful on the ball, was really good at working with kids, foot skills, fast feet. And so I reached out to him. He had a younger boys team there. He would bring his boys out. Our girls would be there. And what we said was, listen, hey, we're going to start at, let's say, 6:30 or 6:45. But if you want to come out 30 minutes early, Jeremy's going to run fast footwork. And then we had a goalkeeper coach we brought out at the same time. And if you're a goalkeeper, come out. Shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, there are like 30 kids there.
That's what we're looking for. Right. You're doing footwork with the goalies. They're then turning into goalies in the small-sided game, and you're creating.
And then we're just going right into free play.
Right.
Yeah. So, but here's the biggest thing. I started to like go, man, people started asking, can I bring a friend? Can I bring my younger brother or sister or whatever? I'm like, of course you can. And then another coach was like, hey, I heard you guys are doing this. I'm like, yeah, come on out. And I started to share it with the club. And the club then, I promise you, I kid you not, the last 2 sessions, there were over 100 kids out there. But I remember very specifically, the first night that there was a huge jump, there was a coach like coaching his kids the entire time. And I just went over and I said, Coach, that's not what we're doing. I said, this is just free play. And he's like, oh, you know, he was taken aback. And I said, no, I'm not trying to be, anything. If you want to train them, just take them over there. But you're training your kids like we've come out to do free play, and you've gathered all your kids on one field, and you're running them through a training session.
Right. It's counterintuitive. Said, it's the wrong approach.
Well, here's the main thing. Free play doesn't look the way we want it to look. It doesn't look, especially at the start, the way that we want the game to look through our adult eyes. We have to reference back to the time we first started playing. And that's the thing is, like, you got 4 shoes or some shirts or 2 bushes or a tree and, a bush or whatever, whether it's in the street with the curbs being out of bounds or in the front yard where the yard is, tilting off to the side and there's a sticker bush on one end. And it doesn't look, it's play. And what I've learned more and more over time is that play is the highest form of education. Because the kids that love it and the kids that go out there and just play, they're constantly trying things and solving problems. And we look at it and go, it's not serious. Well, it's not supposed to be serious. It's hard to learn new things when you're constantly under stress. That's about performance. That's about competition. And yes, that comes. And yes, that's layered in. Okay? It's the reason why at 99, the spring season of 99 is always the hardest to play. Because you got the biggest, strongest, the fastest the kids will ever be on the smallest field they're ever going to play on. So we're going to compete and we're going to grind and we're going to press. And then what if you're trying to play during that? The problem is people go, oh my gosh, the result. And I'm like, are you not entertained? Are you not seeing what's happening? So we have to reframe what people are looking at, because the decisions and what you're looking for at the ages of 10 and 11 and 12 are keeping us from what we want to see at the ages of 16, 17, and 18. And they're often the reason that kids never make it to those ages.
Right.
Because they get into high school and they're just going to roll the ball out and say, can you play?
Right. And so
can you play?
If this street soccer, free play, call it what you want, youth player development, however it frames up.
We're not going to call it youth player development because
that's not what it is.
It's just kids playing.
Yeah, it is exactly that. And that's where culture comes in. It's how the place feels. It's what your kid says when they get in the car. It talks about when Charlotte gets in the car and she says she believes she can be good. That's what this is all about. We talked about ID sessions. We talked about player development a little bit. We talked about free play. And if it can layer in and build a foundation for a kid to say that she believes that she can be good, that's powerful. So and we got a minute left, Mike.
That's what every parent wants. No, look, here's what I would say. If a parent says, what can I do to help my kid get better? I say find an environment in which he or she can play as much as possible. That's it. That's it. That's what you want the kids to do. Not because they have to, because they want to, and there's an opportunity for them that we can provide.
I love that. I'm really glad you joined us today on The Goalpost. Raising and supporting young players isn't always easy, but choosing to focus on their growth, their joy, and their character, now that's the right thing to do. You might not see the results right away, but every small moment you invest makes a big difference in your child's life. And remember, all development, all the time. That's not just a motto, it's a promise. We'll be here next time cheering with you.